Hi everyone, welcome to the Swift Arcade. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. So glad you're here to join us today. We're in the middle of rebuilding the Starbucks app. Last episode, we added some tiles to our scrollable view here. We've got collapsible headers going on. In this episode, we're going to dive into one of the more complicated views in here, the rewards tile. You can see we've got some custom auto layout going in here. We've got a really cool element, which we're going to build using core graphics. We've got embedded subviews. We can do animations where we expand and collapse views inside. So if you're interested in seeing how any of this works in the Starbucks app, join us and we'll show you how to do it here. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so the big trick I find really helpful in tackling complex views like this is to break it down into smaller parts. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this view, this rewards tile view, and break it down into a balance view consisting of this 12 star and label here star balance. We're going to create a rewards graphic view representing this core graphics bit here. We're going to have a star rewards view representing this kind of tile within a tile here. And then finally, we'll add in the buttons and put all of that into the reward tile view. We're going to start small, break things down, and build them up from there. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so let's fire up Xcode and let's create a directory to store all this good work we're going to be doing. So let's go into our home here, this home directory. Let's right click and let's add a new group. Let's call it rewards. This is where we're going to do all of our good rewards work. And if you remember our architecture, what we've done to really set up these tiles here is every tile is basically its own view controller. So here we've got some generic tile view controllers. This is how we populated the scrolling and made these views come up. We're going to create a brand new view controller, one called rewards, and that's going to contain all of our good rewards work. So on rewards here, this directory we just created, let's go Command N and let's create two files here. Let's create a Swift file, one called rewards tile view controller. That's going to be the parent view controller containing all of our rewards work. And then let's create one more. Let's call it reward tile view. And this is going to contain all of those elements in our views. Now what we can do just to get things going is let's just see if we can create some kind of view and then get it to appear on our screen here and then have some kind of canvas to work with. So starting with the reward tile view, let's go ahead and build this. Let's import UIKit. Let's create this class called reward tile view. This is going to be a plain old UIView. And to start with, let's not even worry about what this view is going to look like. Let's just give it some size, get it in the view controller, and just get it so we can display. So one quick way of doing that is just giving it an intrinsic content size. This is basically saying, just give me some kind of sizing, a width of 100, a height of 300. That will size my view out. And that should be enough for our view controller to then lay it out. So if we go back to our reward tile view controller now we can make use of that rewards tile view. And let's just stub that out. So let's import UIKit. Let's define a new class here called rewards. Actually, I don't want it to be called, I want it to be called reward, not rewards. I made a typo in our file here. It's the reward tile view controller, singular. Reward tile view controller. And this is going to extend UIView And let's go ahead and instantiate that view we just created. So let's do a let here. Let rewards tile view. That's going to be equal to our rewards tile view, reward tile view. This is the view we just created, which just has its very simple intrinsic content size. And let's just lay that out within our view controller. Remember, we did this in our last episode with child view controllers. We can instantiate views like this. And then in our view.did load of our view controller, we can actually take them and pin them to the edges of our view controller. And that's all we're going to do here. We're going to be using auto layout. So the first thing we're going to do is take our view, set its mask to enable auto layout by setting that be equal to false. We're then going to add that to the sub view. So this rewards view we just defined is now in our sub view of our view controller. And then we're just going to lay it out. We're just going to pin it to the top, leading, trailing, bottom. And that should take that view and just have it fill the view in the view controller. And essentially that's it. Now all we need to do is actually use this. So let's now go back to our home view controller, and right where we've done all this tile work here, let's go ahead and add one more. Let's now add our reward tile view controller. And let's just run and see if we can get something to come up and give us that canvas for us to start designing the reward view. And voila, great. So here we've got a blank view at the top. This is where we can start doing this layout here. We're set up really well. We're good to go. Now the first element we're going to tackle in our view here is actually this little rewards view here. This is something we're going to call a balance view. It's got a large label here. It's got a little star here, which we're going to use SF symbols on, and it's got another label underneath. Now let's just talk about why we're going to actually break this into its own view. Because we could just start laying these out within the rewards tile view that we just created. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But what I found is if you put everything into one view and you've got a lot of elements going on, your views can get really big really fast. So what we're going to do, and the technique I want to show you, is how to create a small mini view here, just representing this label, this image, and this label here, create its own view, and then we'll put that into the rewards view and continue to build it up slowly and incrementally like that. It'll help break things down, help keep things separated, and hopefully keep your code clear. So let's go back and start doing that. Let's go into rewards. Let's go Command N to create a new Swift file here. And let's create something called balance view. This is going to be a brand new view. So we'll import UIKit. Class balance view. This is just going to be a regular UI view. And in here, we're going to go ahead and now lay and design this out. So looking at how this is laid out, let's just go ahead and create some elements here. First, we can start with that label here, representing the 12. I'm going to call that points label. And that's just going to be a plain old UI label. And then underneath that star, we're going to do that with our symbolic UI symbols, the same way that we got our graphics down here in the tab views. Let's go ahead and call that star view. So we're going to have a view representing that star. And for that, I've got a factory method, which is going to help us fill that in. And I'll show you how that works in just a second. I'm just going to copy it in here like this. And then finally, for that bottom label here, let's just call that the star balance label. Star balance label, and it is also going to be a plain old UI label. Now let's open up the factories method that we created earlier. This is where we create all our factory methods, and I'm just going to drop a new one in there. This one is called make symbolic image view, and what this does is this builds an SF symbol for, in this case, a star, by passing in the name of the symbol we want created along with how large we like it to be. By default, it's going to have a large scale. What that does is that creates a UI image of the symbol and then returns it in a UI image view, which is exactly what we want here. I'm just going to go Command B to get this to compile. So make symbolic image view, we're going to pass in the system name of star fill. That's the SF symbol for this star. And that's going to give us a UI image view that we can then use in our auto layout. So let's go ahead and keep on fleshing this out here. Let's go ahead and set up this view by overriding an initializer, in this case frame rect. I'm going to call the parent on it. I'm going to ignore the rect they pass us. I'm just going to start with the 0 frame because we're doing this with auto layout. I actually don't want to use the frame that might be passed in. And then here we're just going to go with that same old functional style, or just where I'm going to create two methods, one called style and one called layout, and that's where we're going to style and lay out these elements we just created up here. So let's just go down here and create a function called style, and then let's create one more for layout. Okay. Now for styling, let's go ahead and set that up. After I go ahead and accept that required initializer, yes. So styling these guys, let's just take a look at what we're doing here. This points label, we're going to always set all of our auto read mask, all of our auto layout constraints mask to be false. If we don't do that, auto layouts can be very frustrating. So that's what we're doing here on each of our elements, setting that to be equal to false. And then we're just going to set some preferred font sizes. Here we're going to make this 12 a large title bold. We're also going to set some text on it. I'm just going to hard code the text in here for now. I'm just going to give it a 12. Here's our star view, which we created as an SF symbol up here. We're going to enable it for auto layout. We're going to give it a color, star yellow. This is a color we defined earlier. It's going to give it that yellow tint. And then we're going to set its content mode to be aspect fit. That's just going to make it fit within whatever constraints we give it. And then for the star balance label, this guy down here, we're going to set him up for auto layout, give him a font size of footnote, set his text color to be label, and then give it, we're just going to hard code the text in there, star balance. And that's really it for styling and setting those up to be used. Now for the layout portion, let's go ahead and do that. Let's just add some subviews like this. So we're going to take each of our elements that we defined up here and add them to the view. Remember, we're a view. We're just going to add them in here, points, star, balance, label. And then the fun stuff, let's do the auto layout and constraints. So here I'm just going to bring in my little snippet of activate constraints array. This is going to activate whatever constraints we define in here. And let's start with this points label at the top here. I'd like this label to be immediately flush to the top and leading edge here. So I can do that with these two constraints just like this. Point label, top anchor constraint, go to the top anchor of our view, pin that to the top. Points label, leading anchor, I'm going to hard set that to the leading anchor of our view here. That's going to pin it to the upper and left right there. Now the star view, let's take a look and see how we can set that out. Our star view is a little bit to the right of this label. So for its leading, we're going to say star view leading, this edge right here. I'd like you to be just after the points label, trailing anchor here. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a constant of -2. Just after playing with this, I found I wanted to nudge the star a little bit to the left. So I'm going to pull it back with this -2. Then we can center the Y on the points label. So I'm going to center this relative to the points label, but I also want to offset it by 4 just to adjust it a little bit. And I think in this case, I want to bring it down just a little bit. And then I'm going to set a height anchor on it of 15. This is just something I empirically tried. It seems to work well, and it just satisfies all the layout constraints to make sure things look good in our scroll view. Okay, so that's our star view. Now let's just take a look at that star balance label underneath and how we can set that up with auto layout. And what we can do here is go star balance. Okay, so you sit underneath the points label here. So star balance top anchor, we're going to put you right under the points label bottom anchor, and we're going to just hard code the difference to 0. So we're going to make it pretty flush. And then we're going to go leading, trailing, bottom. We're just going to stretch that right across this view. So the leading is going to go to the edge of the view that we're contained in. The trailing is going to go right to the edge that we're trailing in here. Same with the leading, and then we're also going to pin it to the bottom. And that should fully define this view, just of these 3 elements here. So that's our balance view. So now that we've got that, let's go back to our reward tile view controller and see if we can actually use it in here. Let's go ahead and create a balance view here. So we're going to go let balance view is equal to the balance view we just created. There we go. And now this is just another view that we need to lay out and do all of our good stuff in. So let's come in here and let's just override the init frame, just like we did before. I'm going to call super init, and I'm going to set the frame to be 0. And then we're going to do our good old style and our layout here, just like we do before with other views. And this one, because it's going to get a little bit more extensive, yes, I will import that. I'm going to put these methods in an extension down here just to separate them from the initialization a bit. It's a styling thing. You don't have to do this, but I just found it kind of useful. So I'm going to come down here and go reward tile view. And down here, I can define now those methods we defined up top, style and layout. Okay, there we go. So let's start with the style for our balance view. All we need to do here is enable it and get it set up for auto layout. So we'll just go balance view, translate auto resizing false into constraints to equal false. And then down here in the layout, let's go ahead and use it. So in order to use our balance view, we need to add it to our subview. So we'll go add subview balance view. That gets it in the view hierarchy. We'll then add our auto layout snippet constraints here. So let's go ahead and define some constraints on this balance view. And here, let's just start by taking this view and pinning it to the top and leading of our reward view. Remember, this is our reward view here. It's the whole thing. And we're just adding this little balance view right in here. So let's just go ahead and do that with these two constraints. Let's go ahead and put it on the top anchor. Balance view top anchor constraint is equal to the top anchor. That'll pin it to the top. And then we'll go balance view leading anchor is going to go to, here's the slightly different syntax that we're using in this case for auto layout, equal the system spacing after the leading here. It just kind of reads nicely. We'll give it a multiplier of 2, a little bit of padding, and that should pin it in the upper left-hand corner. Now I've got a typo here. I actually don't want that. I want that to be lowercase to use the instance we created. And with that, let's see if anything comes up on the screen. Let's go ahead and run this by going Command R. And hey, voila, there we go. We've got a nice little balance view pinned up there, and that's the beginning of our rewards view. Good stuff, everybody. Okay, so let's just touch on it again and review what we just did here. We created a rewards view controller with a rewards view, and then we added a balance view within that rewards view, just breaking down that big view into some smaller pieces. Now all we're going to do is rinse and repeat. We're just going to continue adding elements like a rewards option, a detail button here. For this episode, I'm just going to create a placeholder image here and just give it a default height and probably a color to show it's there. This is a bigger task. We're going to have a whole episode dedicated to core graphics where we go into excruciating detail around how we build this. But for now, let's just flesh out the rest of the UI elements, see if we can't get some placeholders on screen here, and then we can continue to break down and do some of these other elements after. So let's start by adding our rewards button. So let's go back and continue working in our rewards tile here, and let's just flesh out some of these other elements. Let's start by adding this rewards button here. So we're going to add a rewards button like this. We're going to have a placeholder for a rewards graphic view like this. This graphics view is going to represent this view here. This doesn't actually exist. We're going to create it in a later episode. So for now, I'm just going to create a placeholder. This is really handy as a design technique. You can just create, remember, everything we're doing here are just views at the end of the day. Labels, buttons, images, all these things are just views. So if you ever just want to get your auto layout going and just stub things out, you can absolutely create a plain view. We'll give it some height and size later and just get it laid out in there. We're going to do a whole section also on this element here. We're going to call this our star rewards view, but we're not going to tackle that right now because that's a chunk of work. So we're just going to create a plain old UI view here. And then we've got our details button at the bottom, which is this little guy right here. So let's just add these as elements to our view here and just go ahead and stub those out and see if we can't get something up just to flesh out the rest of this view. Okay, so let's just go style some things and set auto layout to be equal to false so all these things can actually work. So we've got our rewards graph view, our star rewards view. Let's do our rewards button. Rewards button dot translates equals to the constraints equal to false. We'll do the same thing for our details button. Translates into constraints equal to false. The reason why I've got these broken out down here is we're going to apply some more styling to these later. That's why they're not, normally I like to have my elements follow the order that they're laid out in the page here, starting at the top and working your way through the page. but this is fine for now. You'll see what we're going to do there in just a second. And let's go ahead and let's just give our buttons some text. So rewards button dot, title label. Title label dot text is equal to rewards options. And let's go ahead and give our details button some text also. Title label dot text. You are going to be equal to details. And let's also set the background on those just to give them a little bit of color to make them stand out in the page a bit. So rewards background color, let's just make you system blue. And for the details, let's also make you background color of equal to system blue. I like to do this just on views and buttons just to make sure I can separate them and see how they're being laid out, because by changing the background color, it's going to show me how they're positioned on the screen. And that should be good for now. Let's go back down to layout and just see if we can get these other elements appearing on the page. Let's start by just adding our elements to our page like this. Our button, our placeholder graphics, and our details button. Let's just add them to the view. And then let's go ahead and do the auto layout for these. I'm just going to go a little bit faster here because I'm hoping this will become a little bit more routine. I will still walk through it though and explain. Let me just create a little bit of space by going Command 0. And let's look at the auto layout of this. We don't need this height constraint for now. That's going to come in later. All right, so what we have here is our rewards button over here on the right. We're basically going to center it on the Y of the balance label there, the balance view points label. We're going to center Y just so that aligns nicely there. And then we're going to pin it over to the trailing side here and give it a multiplier spacing of 3. So we're going to come off the edge here and give it a spacing of 3. Note we have not added this little chevron yet. We're going to do that in a second. Then for our rewards graph view, that's this nice graphic here. We're going to pin it to the top and we're going to put it right under the balance view. So we're going top anchor of rewards graphic view. You're going to sit equal to system spacing below the balance view bottom anchor, and we'll give that a multiplier of 1. And then we're going to center its X, so it just sits right in the middle horizontally on the screen there. And then we're going to give it a frame width. This is actually a neat constraint. What we're doing here is we're setting the width of this graphic to be equal to the frame of the entire view here, right across the entire view. If we were building, when we get into building this core graphic element from scratch, we won't know the exact size of our view initially, but for now that constraint's just going to set it for us. And when we get into designing this core graphic later, you'll see why that becomes a little bit more important. But don't worry about it for now. Our star rewards view, that is going to be a little view here. When we expand, that clicks into here. We're just going to set some constraints on it, although we don't really need to worry about it for now because we're not adding this action yet, which is going to expand and collapse. But when we do lay it out, we can just go over its constraints. We're basically saying this star rewards view here, we're going to pin you right underneath the reward graph view. You're going to have a leading and a trailing with a multiplier of 1. And then our final element down here, this details button, we're just going to stick it right under that star rewards view, bottom anchor. And we're going to give it a padding of 2, so it's going to sit under there. And then we're going to go leading and bottom. Leading here is going to be completely flush. Actually, we're going to put the detail button flush to the balance view, so it's going to go right along here. That's what this constraint is doing. And then finally, we'll pin it to the bottom and give it a little bit of spacing of 2. Now I know that's a lot of auto layout stuff, and normally I wouldn't go this fast. It takes some time to actually do this, but I just wanted to show you how it works, and hopefully that explains the general layout, and that's just stuff you've got to do when laying these things out. Now, to be honest, I'm not even sure if this is going to work exactly yet. Let's go Command R and see what we get, and see what kind of view pops up. And ta-da, doesn't that look stunning? We've got our balance view over here. I think this is our reward options button. Not at all quite sized the way we want. That's our details button. And I assume that our other elements are in here. We can just verify and see if they're there. Actually, I know they won't be because we haven't given them any explicit heights yet. But we've got some general layout going. We've got some elements in here. Let's see if we can just flesh this out and make this appear a little bit more nicely. Okay, let's start with this rewards option. Let's see if we can't get this looking better. Let's come back into our rewards tile layout here. And right under the style method, I'm just going to copy in a method which is going to completely style that rewards button for us. Let me just bring that in. Let me just make the call to actually use it, which we will use right here. So instead of setting up the text explicitly myself and setting up the constraints myself, what I'm going to do is just call it explicitly like this. And let's just go through and see what goes into styling this button to make it look like this over here. Okay, first off, we're going to start off as we always do by setting our rewards mask to be equal to false. We're not going to worry about the reward tap action yet. That's going to add the target action so that when we tap that, it expands. We're not going to worry about that for now, but that's what that line does. What we're doing here is we're going to combine and build a button that has a label along with an image. So what you're seeing here is an SF symbol. It's a chevron. It's just chevron down. And we're, just like we did before with symbol configuration, we're getting the symbol, we're getting the image, and then we're setting that image on the button. So this is something that's really neat. You can actually set images and text on buttons. So we're going to get an SF symbol for the chevron down, add it as an image to the button, and then we're going to do some more styling. We're going to tint the image here, the down chevron, to have a color of label. We're going to set its content mode to be scale aspect fit, so it fits within the view we give it. And then we can basically just style the text portion of the button after that. So here we can give it the text rewards option. We can set the same color label on the text of the button as we do on the image. We can give it a font. We're going to give it a font size of footnote here. And then this is the really weird thing, but it's just one way to get this to work. When you add an image to a button, by default, UIKit wants to put it on the left-hand side. So the image would normally be in the left-hand side over here, followed by the text here. Of course, the way this design works, we actually want it on the right. And one way to do that is to make use of something called the semantic content attribute and set this attribute to be force right to left. What this is, in iOS, there's directions on how you can read on a given view. If you're in English, we read from left to right. In other languages, they read from right to left. We can fake out or trick this button into putting the image on the right by setting this content attribute force right to left. So now it thinks that we're reading in a language that goes from right to left. We can, by setting this over here, it will set the image on the right-hand side. That's what's going on there. A little bit of black magic, but that's just how that works. And then finally, you can adjust the image and the content of your button by nudging things around by using UI Edge insets. So UI Edge insets is a super handy little attribute to know. That's how you can tweak the position of the image and the text in this case. Here we're just going to move the image a little bit. We're going to give it a little bit of spacing at the top, some padding on the left. And for the content itself, we're just going to give it a little bit of spacing on the right here of 20. That's what's going on, and that's how we set up that reward button. So let's now run this and see what it looks like. And voila, there we've got a button. We don't need that background color of system blue, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's just run it again. And there we go. We've got a nice rewards button that doesn't do anything, but at least it's styled right. Okay, next let's take a look and see how to do this details button down here. I'm just going to go Command O to bring back our menu on the left. To do the styling for this, I've got another function we're going to add to our factories method. This one is called Make Clear Button. Now before we walk through that, let's just go back to our view. And to get back, I'm going to go Control, Command, back arrow, or I can just click on the reward tile here to get back also. And in here, instead of doing this detail background color work, I'm just going to do this instead. Actually, I'm going to put this after the Make Rewards button here. And one thing you may be wondering is why did we make a function call within tile view here and leave this method here? And what made me decide to put this function here out in the factory. The reason why I wanted to keep make rewards button here is I think this is the only place we're actually going to use it. This is the only view I know so far that has the style of view. That's why I kept it in the rewards tile there, and no one else needs it. This make clear button I put in a factory because I think this styling and detailing we may use in another part of the app. That's why it returns a new instance of a button and sets it equal to this. But let's go take a look at that by going Control, Command, left click, and let's go in there. And let's just take a look at the styling of this clear button. So we're just going to create a brand new button here, set it up for auto layout. We're going to set its title to be the text of whatever we pass in this case details, and then we're going to set this property called adjust font size to fit width. This is a nice thing to set in the property. If your font label gets too big, bigger than the size of the label, it will adjust it and make it fit the width it's got. So we're going to set that equal to true. And then because we're doing the styling here and we're giving this edging, the way we give this button a little bit more padding is by setting its UI edge insets, its content edge insets, just like this. So we add a little bit of padding on the top, the left, the bottom, and the right. That's what gives it a little bit of space around there. And then we're going to round the corner. Because I know the height of this is 40, I know that we can just divide its diameter by 2 to give us the radius. And then we're going to set the border width to be 0.5. That's what gives it that nice little edge there. Then really it's just about setting up colors. Set the title color to be label. We're going to set the border color to be the same label as we said here, although here we need to add a little bit of a lower primitive, a core graphics color. And then here we're going to set the background color to be system background color and return the button. So back in a reward tile view, we're just going to make that call, set that up, and if we go Command R and run, voila, we get our nice detail button. Okay, we're almost done for this episode. Let's just wrap things up by giving our rewards graph view a little bit of height and width and a background color just so we can get it to show up here. So let's go back into our reward tile view. Let's go down to style and let's just go rewards graph view dot background color is equal to system red. So that'll give it the nice red background color. Let's then head down into layout and see if we just can't get it to layout a little bit better. I'm just going to comment out this frame width for a second because that's going to come in later on when we need to dynamically figure out what the width is. And for now, let's just hard code a width constraint. Let's let's hard code. Let's start with the height constraint. Let's give it a height of just say 100, just so we can kind of sit there and let us know that it's there. And then let's actually just pin it to the left, the leading and the trailing, just to give it some width. So let's go rewards graph view dot leading anchor. We're going to go equal the system spacing after the leading anchor of our view. And we'll use the same multiplier we did before of 2, just to give it that 16 spacing. And then to go to the trailing, if I want to use that similar syntax with equal the system spacing, I have to flip it by starting with the trailing anchor first. Then I'm going to add that constraint equal the spacing after our rewards graph view, it's trailing, and we'll give it also a multiplier of, a multiplier of 2. Trailing anchor, tab, multiplier of 2, comma. Okay, if we run that, we'll now see that we've got our graph view there. But this is a good place to pause, and it sets us up nicely for coming back and filling out these other view elements. Okay, let's quickly recap what we've done here. We've tackled what is a relatively complex view in our Starbucks app here. We're building the rewards view here. We've got a rewards tile view controller. We created a dedicated view. We broke down that view into smaller constituent parts. We've got a balanced view here. We added some buttons. We're set up so we can actually go ahead and do these more complicated core graphics and animation routines next time. And this really sets us up nicely going forward. And hopefully this gives you some idea of how you can take these complex views and break them down into smaller parts. Okay, thank you so much for coming, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.